Well, everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey, everybody, Cantonese Cat here. NVDA, AMD, TSM, AVGO, SMCI. They're all down a lot today. What's going on? Semiconductor stocks are just supposed to go up, right? They're not supposed to go down at all. Let's talk about what's going on with them. Or at least what I think is going on. Is this the top? Or are we still potentially just consolidating sideways? Or are we going to go down a lot more? Or are we just going to keep going up from here on out? So let's talk about it. First of all, I just wanted to show you, if you look at the last cycle high to the cycle low, you draw a Fibonacci level on the on the linear scale, you can basically tell that it's finding rejection as some of the very appropriate Fibonacci extension level. For example, it found rejection here at the 1.618, which is a very important level. And it went sideways here for about 6 months before going up further, and then found some rejection over here at the 3.618 level, and went sideways for about a month or two before going up further. And right now we're also at a very, relatively important Fibonacci extension level at the 4.764. And so far we're getting rejected, forming a little bit of a tweezer look to it. I mean, granted, July is not over yet. You only have about halfway through. So there's still some chance potentially to make it not as tweezer looking. But generally, tweezer tops are not pretty. Generally these are potentially representing the top. So am I bearish on NVIDIA? Am I going to sell everything? No. I mean, I'm just basically showing you a scenario and basically just showing you what I'm seeing. Because overall, even though it looks on the RSI to be overbought, on the monthly chart, I'm still not really seeing any bearish divergence here at all. I think we might be starting to get to the point where NVIDIA stock might end up starting to go up on bearish divergence, and it could potentially go on for a longer period of time. Now, you can clearly see that there are two other previous cycles over here, right? Up and down, right? Very, very clear two cycles over here, right? So I'm going to try to extrapolate to see where we are. Are we at the top or are we at the middle of the rally? How much potential further can we go up? Let's pull up the Ichimoku cloud here. And you can sort of see that just looking at it, whenever you start to have the Tenkan and the Kijun start to nicely separate, that's when you have a very nice bull trend, right? Nicely separate is when you have a really nice bull trend. You got really nicely separation over here, and that's been going for about a whole year. You still have a very strong bull trend. If I have to make some correlate between where we are here at the cycle versus these two cycles over here, I think that we have simply got a little bit way too far away from the blue line over here, which is the Tenkan, aka the conversion line. And because we're so far extended away from the blue line, we generally end up getting punished by going through time or through price correction. Over here, this happened, went through sideways here for about 6 months, got closer to the Tenkan, wait for the Tenkan to catch up before going up further. But over here, we are a little bit too far overextended. So are we going to end up going sideways and wait for the Tenkan to go up? Or are we going to go down a little bit more for the Tenkan to catch up? That's always a tough thing. I do think that over here, it does have the same look as we do over here around mid-cycle, where things just got way overextended and you end up having price go sideways for about 8 months. Or this over here also looked very similar to what looks over here too. And you can see that during these areas over here and over here, when price just kind of went sideways for over here for about 5 months or so, over here for about 8 months or so. And so far we're about, maybe second, you can argue like the top over here is the third month. So far maybe second or third month into it. All of these are correlated with the fact that the RSI may have peaked. Like over here, the RSI may have peaked. Over here, I mean, sure, you have like a little tiny bit of like an equal, maybe a little bit of a higher high here, but really the peak of this cycle is really over here, right? And I do wonder whether or not this is the peak of the RSI for the cycle. It doesn't mean that the cycle is over. It doesn't mean that we're going to plummet from here on out. It means that the trend is starting to see a little bit of exhaustion, and it means that we might be going sideways for a bit longer and have another push up that can happen for another 18 months or another 15 months or so, right? And if you're talking about from this conjuncture, I'm going to show you some other indicators too to show you why I think we're very similar to this cycle over here around, I would say around like December 2016, January 2017. I think we're very similar here if I look at the Bollinger Band. Now, the thing about it is, once you have this happen, you have an RSI top, you can continue to go up over here from like $2.6, $2.7 all the way up to like 7.2. You're talking about like about 2 to 3x over here, right? Which is nothing to sneeze at. If you're talking about from around like $13 over here to the cycle high here around like 24, that's about at least like 2x if not 3x, right? So even if we are peaked at the monthly RSI, and even the trend's starting to get exhausted, it's not just going to plummet like that, because I'm not really seeing any signs of trend exhaustion, with the exception that it's maybe starting to have that happening. And even when you start to have a trend exhaustion, price can keep going up for another 15 months, for another like 18 months. So I'm not going to bet against the trend. And the trend still says that we want to go up, but maybe going up on a little bit of exhaustion when price went up over here with RSI going down, right? When price went up over here and RSI just kind of stays sideways over here, right? I do think that we have a little bit more juice maybe for another 12 to 18 months. And you're talking about potentially hitting targets like maybe in the high 200s or maybe in the 300s. That could be where the target end up being based on what I'm looking at from the previous cycles over here and here and here, right? And if you don't just look at the Ichimoku cloud, I'm going to pull up the Bollinger Band. Now, there has been, that's the reason why I think that this cycle over here, why I think this is very, very similar to over here around December 2016 or January 2017, why I think these two areas are very similar is because of this. When you have a full Bollinger Band expansion, and this last cycle over here didn't really quite have that, so I can't really use that as an example, but I actually can. I'll show you here in a second. When you're starting to have a very, very strong Bollinger Band expansion upwards, the lower Bollinger Band also goes all the way down, right? Same thing happened over here on this cycle, Bollinger Band expansion, up and down, it goes all the way down, right? How far does it down? Well, it goes all the way down to the negatives, right? Now, when it gets down to here, you're really starting to look for any potential sign for exhaustion whenever the lower Bollinger Band may start to, curl up and may start to have a little bit of a contraction, right? So this contraction happened, when did that happen? Around December of 2016 to January 2017, and that also coincides with the RSI top over here, right? So again, around December 2016 to like January 2017, we're right around here, where things are like a little bit overextended for months. You just kind of close way about the upper Bollinger Band over here, but it looks like the trend may be starting to get exhausted right around here, right? Where are we at right now in the cycle? Well, we have a little bit of sideways candle over here. Bollinger Band looks like it's still expanding up, right? Just like over here, Bollinger Band looks like it's still expanding up, right? But what is the lower Bollinger Band doing? Well, it's still all the way down to negatives, but you can see that it's starting to potentially contract here a little bit. It might start to show a little bit of sign of a trend exhaustion, and you can see that the RSI also over here, maybe if this end up expanding down further, then never mind, right? The trend's going to keep going higher. But because I'm seeing finally, like even here, that's not really a contraction, it's just still expansion. But here I'm finally seeing a little bit of sign of contraction over here, which makes me wonder whether or not that's the RSI peak for this cycle, and that price could continue to go up higher while RSI could go lower on a bearish divergence until the entire cycle collapse, which can be about 12 to 18 months later. I do wonder, though, whether or not here is similar to here, and that we might end up going sideways for another 2 months or so. That's entirely possible. Now, I also would draw a similarity, draw your attention to the similarity between here, here, and also here. The reason why that is you can see the Bollinger Band over here is expanding, and the Bollinger Band down here is expanding. But once you get to this area over here where it went sideways for about 8 months, before it does that, the Bollinger Band contracts over there. And that also coincides with the RSI high for this last cycle here as well. There's a lot of confluence that is making me think that the trend may start to show some exhaustion. And that might mean that we keep going up for another 12 to 18 months, and that might be the top of the cycle, based on previous cycle analysis. I do not think it's just going to end up plummeting down. That's not how it works, right? You have to usually have to show some sign of exhaustion first, based on Bollinger Band, based on RSI, and right now we're getting a little bit of a flavor for both. So it does make me a little bit cautious, but you know when the time is to sell is not when Bollinger Band starts to contract, because price can go up a lot higher. But you're really talking about maybe considering selling when the Bollinger Band comes back down from Earth all the way back up to reality, right? If you're starting to have more and more contraction over here, that's when you wonder, you worry, hey, the trend's probably going to end soon. When you start to see a little bit of contraction over here, that's when you worry, hey, maybe the trend's going to end soon. I would say that I would probably keep the stock until maybe the Bollinger Band gets to around this level over here potentially, but that didn't really work for this last cycle. Like it did. Every single cycle is a little bit different. But I think the cycle currently looks very similar to the cycle from like 2015 all the way to 2018. If that's the case, then the time to sell maybe I'm speculating here. I mean, you had this big giant red candle over here, which coincides with Bollinger Band getting close to this level over here. Maybe, but you might want to consider selling before that. Whenever you see a Bollinger Band comes up again, that's when you know this trend is really starting to exhaust. When a Bollinger Band comes up again, that's when you know the trend is really starting to exhaust. That hasn't happened yet. Right now, Bollinger Band is still all the way down in negatives. But I'm showing you some warning sign in terms of what you need to watch out for, right? Because I'm a nice cat, meow meow. What about the other semiconductor stocks? Like, does that mean that because we are potentially going sideways for longer, does it mean that AMD has to go on sideways for longer? Does it mean that TSM had to go sideways for longer? What's happening with the other stocks? Well, let's look at it. First of all, I'm gonna just basically draw a correlate over here. I'm gonna show you like the last cycle where price went sideways from August of 2020 all the way to like April 2021. AMD did go sideways around the same time, right? But it doesn't always have to happen that way, because when NVDA went up, last cycle AMD also went up pretty parabolically. So they cool down together, and that's not anything surprising, right? So far, AMD has got a little bit of a different look. It kind of really just went sideways correct, build up a nice bull flag over here, when NVIDIA has just been going up like crazy. What happened with this cycle versus the cycle, 2 cycles before that, right? You remember I showed you that NVIDIA could go sideways over here for like months, right? All the way from December 2016 to around April 2017. What did AMD do at that time? It beasted. It went from like 750 to like 15, It like doubled during that period of time. I wonder if this consolidation period, just like this consolidation period over here that happened before NVIDIA went sideways, I wonder whether or not that actually would coincide with like an increased push up of AMD. If I look at the Ichimoku cloud, I actually think that the AMD chart doesn't look bad at all, because it has simply gone way too far, way too fast for 4 months in a row. And it's just correcting, it's cooling down, it's touching the Tenkan, and it's going down to the Kijun, almost find support right at the money on the Kijun on the red line over here. And it balances trying to get back and reclaim the Tenkan. So far, we're having a little bit of a difficulty doing so. But I still think it's probably going to end up being able to do that. AMD does this. AMD has this personality where it just shoots up for like a few candles, few months in a row. And it does a little structure kind of like this. Kind of like over here, right? It shot up a few months in a row, and it does this for about like 5 months, right? Kind of like it did over here. It shot up here, and then kind of goes sideways for about 6 months. That's kind of what AMD's personality is, I guess. So I do wonder whether or not we've gotten sideways consolidating enough, and maybe there's potentially a little bit of rotation coming to AMD, even though today's price action didn't really seem to show that. But actually, for as far as AMD is concerned, it's like a lot less overextended than NVIDIA. I actually feel that it's maybe got like some pretty decent consolidation here. With TSM, that's also way too far overextended from the Tenkan, just like NVIDIA, if anything, is even more so, right? So am I surprised that you're getting a stall here? Am I surprised you end up having like a big red candle? Am I surprised that we are having people getting scared because Trump was saying like Taiwan needs to put their weight, or whatever? Am I, but you just look at the chart. Like you don't really need anybody to say anything for you to worry that hey, maybe a little bit too far overextend over here, right? But if you're wondering whether or not TSM has to go sideways while NVIDIA goes sideways, I would say probably because they actually ran up together a lot, and they also both overextended. Although history can say that sometimes these stocks can diverge, right? Like over here, when price went sideways for about 8 months, TSM was basically going like a little bit of a beast mode over here, right? So they can diverge, but because they haven't diverged over the last year or so, I don't think they will diverge. I think they're probably going to end up cooling down, consolidating sideways together. That is my guess. What about AVGO? It's not too overextended. It's a little bit overextended, but it's not too overextended. So matter of fact, I think AVGO might actually be able to sustain a little bit more bullishness compared to NVIDIA. That's kind of my thought. SCMI on the Ichimoku actually looks like it's ready to run. It actually looks like it's not too far overextended. Actually looks pretty good. I don't know. It's just like bull flag after bull flag, and it looks like it just bounced when taking a kitchen. Could it go back down to like 600, 630 to back test the red line over here? Sure, that would still be a very bullish structure if it does that, but it'll scare the crap out of everybody going from like all the way up here from like 1,200 all the way down to like 600. It's like 50% drop. Is this like a bear market? Looking at structure, the answer is no, right? But yeah, I mean, it's a very bullish chart, and it doesn't look overextended actually on the Tenkan and Kitchen. So there may be some potential room for it to go up. I don't know. It's weird how things work out, Now, one final question I want to talk about on the semiconductor stock series here is this: is NVIDIA going to go down and plummet all the way down to like 90 to backtest the Tenkan over here? Is that a possibility? The answer is yes, that is a possibility. How likely is that going to happen? I think it's not very likely. The reason why is because this is NVIDIA. This is the market moving stock. I think any dip is probably going to end up being bought up in a pretty drastic way. It could go potentially going down to maybe like the 110 range. I have a hard time seeing all the way going down to 90, although I am not right all the time. Matter of fact, I'm wrong a lot of times. I just want to show you the risk level is 90, right? That's the absolute risk level. Whether or not it's going to go down to 90, I don't know. I really don't know. I have some doubts that would happen. I actually made a post today during intraday. I thought that NVIDIA had bottom for the day when I was looking at the weekly chart. And when I was looking at the weekly chart, I saw that price was touching a very, very much of a rising Tenkan blue line over here. And because of how quickly it rises, I thought that this is going to be a pretty decent support. So the Tenkan was right around 116.97, and it bounced almost to the dot. It went down just a little tiny bit of it, and it did bounce from that level here on the weekly. So that gives me some confidence that, hey, there is a possibility in this world that NVIDIA might have just made an ABC correction, and this could have been it, and we might end up going sideways a little bit higher up before going higher. That's certainly a possibility, right? I can totally see us kind of getting above this level and just went sideways for a couple months before going up higher. That's a possibility. I also want to make sure that that's a possibility. This could have been the bottom over here for this correction. Now, what about the baseline down here, about 100? Do I think it's going to go down to 100? I'm not sure. I'm also skeptical about that. But I do think that today we have found some pretty decent support, and this support is nothing to sneeze at. If you're looking at not the Ichimoku cloud, but looking at the Super Ichi cloud, you also can see that we also have found support here at the baseline of the kitchen of the Super Ichi cloud, right? There's a little bit of confluence over there between different indicators. And the Super Ichi on the weekly generally is a pretty good support for the bull markets in general. Like over here, like it dipped down a little bit. Like over here, it dipped down a little bit. But generally, it served as a pretty decent support for bull market on the weekly. You know, after a bullish cross. Right now, the super trend is still positive. And you can see during a bear trend, the Tenkan, the Tenkan Kijun, especially Kijun over here, can serve as pretty decent resistance, right? And during this bull market, price might sometimes dip underneath the Tenkan and the Kijun. It might touch the cloud here a little bit, but overall, the Kijun, the red line, served as pretty decent support on the way up, right? And also during this entire bull market over here, for the most part, the red line over here serves pretty decent support on the way up. There are some exceptions. So over here, I am seeing that we are right at that level. If we found support over here, who am I to argue that, when things are at support, that it's not being supported, and you would like to maybe maintain some bullish bias at support, right? If the support breaks, which it can always break, would it be 90? Would it be 100? Or do we have some other supports that happened before that? Well, we do have some support here around the 110, 108, 107 range over here on the monthly Tsubiichi Tenkan. And the monthly Tsubiichi Tenkan has served as really decent support on the monthly chart during bull market. It has served as very decent support in bull markets. It has served as pretty decent support throughout bull markets, right? So who am I to argue that, maybe it could potentially go down to maybe 110, and that could be the lowest that it might go? Maybe we already have found support today, and maybe we go up a lot higher, right? From here going to like 110, 109, 106, 107 range, it's like less than 10% drop, and for like a high beta stock like NVDA, is probably nothing. If we end up flushing all the way down there, we might end up creating a scenario that's very similar to over here. So I am still feeling pretty bullish on NVIDIA over the next 12 to 18 months, even if the trend may have started to get exhausted, which is hard for you to wrap your head around. But I'm just showing you what I'm seeing. That's all. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to my blathering. Have a good one. Bye.